Some love needs no words. It speaks through eyes, through silence, through loyalty that never wavers. This is the story of a German shepherd whose family was his whole world, even when he was nothing but a burden to them. On the corner of a quiet street stood an old brick house. It wasn't large or decorated with luxury, but it echoed with laughter, warmth, and love. Inside lived Amir, his wife, and their little boy, Ali. Their lives were simple, stitched together with small joys. And into this little world entered a new heartbeat, a German shepherd puppy. Ali had spotted him at a shop near his school. The pup was small, his ears not yet fully upright, his brown eyes wide and curious. Ali begged his father until Amir reluctantly agreed to bring the dog home. They named him Sheru. From the very first day, Sheru changed the rhythm of the house. When Ali came home from school, Sheru was already waiting at the door, tail wagging so fast that his whole body shook with excitement. The boy would drop his bag, run, and collapse into Sheru's furry embrace. At night, when silence wrapped the house, Sheru curled up at Ali's bedside, his head resting gently on the boy's legs, as if to say, "Sleep. I'll guard you." Amir had doubts in the beginning. "A dog is expensive," he muttered to his wife. "Food, medicine. These things cost money." But every time he looked at Sheru, whether the pup was chasing Ali around the yard or resting his head on the boy's lap, Amir's heart softened. Sheru wasn't just a pet. He was family. German shepherds were known for their loyalty, but Sheru carried it in his blood. He became Ali's shadow. In the park when Ali ran, Sheru ran beside him. If Ali fell, Sheru rushed over, licking his face, whining softly as though trying to heal the pain with affection. At night, when strangers walked down the street, Sheru barked from the gate, his voice strong and commanding, keeping danger at bay. Amir often said, "This dog, he's like a soldier. He won't let harm touch us." There was truth in his words. Sheru was more than a guardian. He was an angel cloaked in fur. One night, Ali burned with fever. His mother panicked, pacing the room while Amir called for a doctor. Hours passed, and the fever rose higher. Sheru sat glued to Ali's bedside, his ears pressed back, his chest rising and falling rapidly with worry. Whenever Ali whimpered, Sheru licked his face gently, whining softly, eyes glistening with fear. He didn't sleep a single moment that night. His gaze never left the boy's pale face, as though he were silently praying for him. When morning came and the fever broke, Ali opened his eyes weakly. Sheru wagged his tail, letting out a relieved bark before collapsing beside him, exhausted but happy. From that day, their bond became unbreakable. Life in that small house flowed with warmth. Amir sat in his chair reading the newspaper. His wife brewed tea in the kitchen, and Ali played on the carpet with Sheru. Sometimes Sheru stole Ali's pencil and darted off, forcing the boy to chase him around the house while laughter echoed against the walls. The family had little, but they had each other, and for Sheru this house was heaven. The outside world didn't matter. His paradise was here, in this home, with this boy, in this family. But happiness is fragile. Life never stays the same. What seems eternal often fades before we are ready. For Sheru, the test of his loyalty was still ahead. A storm was waiting, one that would shatter his little world and break his heart in ways no one could ever mend. The small house that once echoed with laughter slowly began to fill with silence. Amir had lost his job at the factory where he had worked for years. At first he told his wife it was temporary, that things would soon improve. But weeks stretched into months, and the promise of better days began to fade like smoke. Bills piled up on the kitchen table. The electricity was cut off twice. Food grew scarce, and with every passing day, tension crept deeper into the walls of the home. Amir sat at the dinner table, staring at a plate that held only bread and lentils. "This can't go on," he muttered, pressing his fingers against his forehead. His wife said nothing, only lowered her eyes to her own untouched food. Sheru sat on the floor beside Ali, his head resting on the boy's lap. The dog didn't complain when his meals grew smaller, when bones replaced meat, when some nights there was nothing at all. He never begged, never barked in frustration. He only sat quietly, as though he understood the family's pain, and chose to share in it. Ali would break his own bread into pieces, sneaking them into Sheru's mouth. "Don't worry, boy," he whispered. "I'll always feed you. You're my best friend." Sheru wagged his tail softly, eyes glowing with gratitude. But Amir's patience began to thin. One evening, after a long and humiliating day of job searching, he came home to find Sheru had torn up an old shoe. Amir snapped. "This dog is nothing but trouble. We can barely feed ourselves, and we're wasting food on him." Ali immediately wrapped his arms around Sheru's neck, his small body shielding the dog. "No, Baba. He's my friend. Don't say that." For a moment Amir froze, torn between anger and the sight of his son's desperate tears. He sighed, rubbing his temples, but the words he had spoken remained heavy in the room. Sheru lowered his head, sensing the shift. Though no one had touched him, he felt the invisible wound cut deep. Late one night, Amir and his wife whispered in the kitchen. "We can't afford him any more," she said softly. "He eats too much. Medicines, food, it's all extra cost we can't handle." Amir's jaw tightened. "I know, but Ali loves him. He'll never forgive us." "Better he cries once," she replied, "than all of us starve slowly." In the next room, Sheru lay awake at Ali's bedside. His ears twitched. He didn't understand the words, but he felt the weight of something dark pressing in. His world was about to change, though he could not imagine how. The following morning, Ali bounded out of bed, laughing as Sheru jumped onto him. They ran to the yard, boy and dog tumbling together on the grass. Sheru barked joyfully, chasing after the ball Ali threw. But Amir stood at the doorway watching. His eyes did not soften at the laughter. Instead, they hardened with resolve. The more he watched, the more he convinced himself it was the right thing to do. Ali noticed nothing. He didn't know that while he laughed, his parents were planning the most painful betrayal of his young life. Days passed. Amir stopped patting Sheru's head. His wife no longer placed food in the dog's bowl without muttering under her breath. The warmth that had once surrounded Sheru began to fade. But Ali? He never changed. He still hugged Sheru tightly at night, whispering dreams into his ears. He still shared his bread, still held his paw when he was sad. To Ali, Sheru was family, and to Sheru, Ali was his reason for living. One evening, Amir loaded an empty sack into the trunk of his old car. He stood there for a long time, staring at the rusty metal, his hands trembling. His wife came to the doorway. "It has to be done tomorrow," she said firmly. Amir didn't answer. He only nodded slowly, guilt heavy in his eyes. Inside, Ali was curled up with Sheru on the floor. The boy's laughter echoed through the walls, pure, trusting, innocent. Sheru licked Ali's cheek, tail wagging happily. He had no idea that tomorrow, the family he had protected, loved and devoted himself to, would drive him away into a loneliness deeper than death. The morning sun rose quietly, its golden light spilling across the narrow street. But inside Amir's house, the warmth of the sun could not touch the cold decision that had already been made. Ali woke up early, laughing as Sheru bounded onto his bed. The boy hugged his dog tightly, burying his face in Sheru's fur. "Come on, boy. Let's play outside before school." Sheru barked happily, leaping around with joy. For him, this was just another day to spend beside his best friend. He couldn't know that it would be the last morning of his happiness. After breakfast, Amir called out, his voice flat. "Ali, get ready. We're going for a ride." Ali's face lit up. "Really? Is Sheru coming too?" Amir forced a smile. "Yes. Bring him." Ali hugged Sheru's neck. "You're coming with us, boy. It's going to be fun." Sheru wagged his tail and bounded into the car, pressing his nose to the window, excited for the journey. But Amir's wife said nothing as she closed the door. Her hands trembled, her lips pressed tightly together, as if she were sealing away her guilt. The car rumbled down the road, leaving behind the familiar streets Sheru knew so well. At first, Sheru barked happily at the passing scenery. But as the minutes stretched, the familiar scents and sights disappeared. The air grew strange, the roads quieter, emptier. Ali didn't notice. He leaned against Sheru, laughing when the dog licked his cheek. "This is the best day, Baba. Right, Sheru?" Sheru wagged his tail, trusting completely, unaware of the betrayal looming ahead. Amir's grip on the steering wheel tightened. Sweat glistened on his forehead. Each mile felt heavier than the last. His wife sat silently, her eyes fixed on the window, unable to watch her son's joy. Finally, the car slowed to a stop on a desolate country road. Tall grass swayed in the wind. No houses, no people. Only silence. "Why are we stopping here?" Ali asked innocently. Amir swallowed hard. "Get out for a bit. Let Sheru stretch his legs." The boy eagerly opened the door and Sheru leapt out, tail wagging, nose sniffing the strange new smells of the open field. He barked happily, running in circles. Ali laughed. "He loves it here." But then Amir called out sharply, "Ali, get back in the car." Confused, Ali obeyed. "But Baba, Sheru—" "Just get in," Amir snapped, his voice harsher than ever. Ali froze, startled, then climbed into the car reluctantly. Sheru, still playful, ran back toward the door, expecting to hop inside with his family. His paws scratched at the door eagerly. And then Amir drove away. Finally, Sheru stumbled. Exhaustion overcame him. He collapsed on the side of the road, dust rising around his trembling body. But even then, he lifted his head, eyes locked on the shrinking car in the distance. He whimpered softly, as if begging, "Please, don't go. I'm still here. I still love you." Ali's cries filled the car. He pressed his face against the window, reaching out his hand as though he could somehow pull Sheru back. "Sheru, I'm sorry. Please come back." But the car never slowed. Amir stared straight ahead, his jaw clenched, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. His wife silently wiped her tears, unable to look back. The last thing Ali saw was Sheru's small figure in the rearview mirror, sitting weakly on the road, still watching them with eyes full of hope that they would return. The car drove on. The road stretched endlessly. No one spoke. Ali's sobs broke the silence again and again. "He'll wait for us. He thinks we're coming back. Baba, please turn around, please." But Amir's answer never came. He only pressed his foot harder on the accelerator. Behind them, Sheru lay in the dust, panting heavily, his body aching, his heart breaking. Yet in his eyes there was no anger, only love, only faith. Even after being left behind, he believed they would come back for him. The betrayal is complete. Sheru has been abandoned, but his loyalty keeps him waiting. His suffering has only just begun. The country road where Sheru had been left behind was quiet. Only the wind whispered through the tall grass, carrying away the dust stirred by the car's wheels. The silence felt endless. Sheru lay there for a long time, his chest rising and falling rapidly. His paws ached, his body trembled with exhaustion. But when he gathered enough strength, he stood again. He turned his head toward the road, eyes fixed on the horizon where the car had disappeared. And he waited. The sun blazed overhead. Sheru sat on the roadside, panting, his tongue hanging from his mouth. Every time a car passed, his ears perked up, tail wagging in desperate hope. But each time it wasn't them. The cars flew by, leaving only dust and disappointment. When night fell, Sheru curled up on the dirt, shivering in the cool wind. His stomach growled with hunger, but his eyes stayed on the road. Somewhere deep inside, he believed, "They'll come back for me. They have to." The days blurred together. Sheru grew thinner, his ribs pressing against his skin. Rain soaked his fur, turning the dirt beneath him into mud. Yet he never strayed far. Every morning he dragged himself back to the same spot where he had last seen them. He sniffed the ground where the car had stopped, where their scents still lingered faintly. It gave him comfort. Like an old memory he refused to let go. At times, kind strangers passing by tried to approach him. They offered scraps of food, water, even gentle hands. Sheru accepted just enough to survive. But the moment they tried to lead him away, He resisted. He pulled back, whining, straining toward the road. His heart belonged only to one family, and he would not leave the place where he believed they would return. Far away, Ali lay awake at night, his pillow wet with tears. "Baba, why did we leave him?" he sobbed quietly, clutching the small blanket Sheru used to sleep on. "He'll be scared. He thinks we'll come back." Amir said nothing. His wife tried to console their son, but guilt weighed on her too heavily to speak. The house felt emptier than ever. The laughter was gone. The warmth had vanished. And Ali could not forget Sheru's eyes, the way they had stared into the car, pleading, confused, yet still full of love. Back on the roadside, Sheru dreamed of home. Sometimes he drifted into sleep, and in his dreams he was back on the carpet, Ali's laughter ringing through the air. He dreamed of the ball rolling across the yard, of soft hands stroking his fur, of nights spent guarding his boy's sleep. But every time he woke, the cold dirt reminded him of reality. Still, he did not give up. His tail wagged weakly whenever a car slowed near him. He lifted his head eagerly, only for his hope to shatter when strangers stepped out instead of his family. And yet, hope never fully died. It flickered inside him, even as his body grew weaker. Weeks passed. Sheru's once bright eyes grew dim with fatigue. His bark, once powerful, became a hoarse whimper. Flies buzzed around him. His fur lost its shine, but his gaze never left the horizon. People in the nearby village began to recognize him. They called him the waiting dog. Some pitied him. Some shook their heads. A few tried to take him home, but none succeeded. Sheru resisted every attempt. He was waiting for the car that had left him, waiting for the boy who had promised, "I'll always feed you," waiting for love to return. One day, fate brought the family back down that same road. Amir had business in a nearby town, and Ali was with them in the car. As they passed the familiar bend, Ali's eyes widened. He pressed against the window, heart leaping into his throat. "Baba! Stop! Look, it's Sheru!" On the roadside sat a thin, frail dog, ribs visible, fur matted. But the moment the car approached, he struggled to his feet, tail wagging weakly, eyes lighting up with recognition. Ali screamed, pounding the window. "Stop the car! Please, he's waiting for us! He never left!" Sheru barked hoarsely, stumbling forward, trying to reach them. But Amir's face hardened. He pressed his foot to the accelerator, the car speeding past. Ali's cries filled the vehicle. "Please, Baba, please let me go to him. He needs us. He's dying out there." Sheru ran a few steps after them, his legs trembling before collapsing again in the dirt. But even as the car vanished, his tail wagged faintly, as though he believed they would turn back. They never did. That night, Sheru curled into himself on the roadside. His breaths were shallow. His eyes glistened under the moonlight. He had seen them again, his family, his boy. For a moment he had felt alive. But now the cold crept deeper into his bones. His body betrayed him, weakening more each day. Still his gaze stayed fixed on the road. Because loyalty knows no end. Because love doesn't give up, even when hope fades. Sheru's suffering and loyalty are at their peak. He's wasting away, still believing his family will return. Ali's guilt is growing unbearable. The road was quiet that night. The moon hung pale and heavy in the sky, casting silver shadows across the fields. A cold wind blew, rustling the tall grass. And on the roadside, where dust and sorrow had become his home, Sheru lay curled into himself. His breaths came shallow now, each one slower than the last. His once strong legs trembled when he tried to stand, so he no longer tried. His ribs pressed sharply against his skin, his fur dull and dirty. But in his eyes still held a flicker of light, a light that refused to die. Sheru closed his eyes, and his mind drifted. He remembered the small brick house where laughter had once filled the air. He remembered Ali's little hands wrapping around his neck, pulling him close in a hug. He remembered the warmth of the carpet where they had played, the sound of Amir's voice reading the newspaper, the smell of tea from the kitchen. He remembered the night Ali had burned with fever, and how he had stayed awake, guarding him like a soldier, praying in silence until the boy's breathing steadied again. In his fading mind, the roadside dirt transformed into soft blankets, the rustling grass into Ali's laughter. For a moment, Sheroo was home again. Far away, Ali sat on his bed, unable to sleep. He held Sheroo's old blanket against his chest, wet with his tears. His heart ached with guilt so deep it felt like it would swallow him whole. "Why did we leave him?" he whispered into the dark. "He's out there waiting for us. He still loves us." His mother listened from the doorway, her own eyes wet, but she said nothing. She had no words to ease his pain, because she knew the boy was right. They had abandoned loyalty itself. Dawn broke quietly. The sky glowed pink and orange, but for Sheroo the colors were fading. His body no longer obeyed him. He lifted his head one last time, ears twitching at the sound of a distant car. His tail wagged weakly, a tiny flicker of joy. "They're coming," he thought. "They're finally coming back for me." His chest rose and fell rapidly as he tried to push himself up, but his legs buckled beneath him. He collapsed once more, the effort too much. The car never slowed. It passed in a rush of dust and wind. Still, Sheroo's eyes stayed fixed on the road. Even as his vision blurred, even as his breath grew shallow, he waited. Because love, once given, cannot be taken back. The world grew quiet around him. The wind stilled. The grass swayed gently like a lullaby. Sheroo's eyelids grew heavy, his body surrendering to the weight of time and hunger. But his last thought was not of pain. It was of Ali. His laughter, his smile, his arms around his neck. He saw the boy running toward him, calling his name, holding him close. His tail wagged faintly, one final time. And then, with a soft sigh, Sheroo's eyes closed. His body went still. On that lonely roadside, the loyal heart of a German shepherd finally stopped beating. Days later, villagers noticed the silent figure lying by the road. They shook their heads sadly. Some buried him beneath a tree nearby, marking the spot with a simple stone. To them, he was just the waiting dog. But for Ali, the loss was deeper than words could ever capture. He never forgot the sight of Sheroo chasing their car. Never forgot the look in his eyes. Never forgot the way his tail had wagged even as they left him behind. Ali grew older, but the memory stayed with him. A scar that time could never heal. He often returned to that stretch of road, sitting quietly beneath the tree where Sheroo rested. He whispered through tears, "I'm sorry, boy. You deserved better. You deserved everything." Sheroo's story ended there, but his loyalty lived on in the hearts of those who knew him. The villagers spoke of him often, a dog who had waited until his last breath for the family he loved. To them, he was proof that true loyalty exists, that even when humans fail, love can remain pure, unbroken. And in Ali's heart, Sheroo was never gone. He was still there in every laugh, in every tear, in every lonely night when Ali whispered his name into the dark, because love like that does not die. It becomes eternal.